Hari Om. Let's start with the prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanura Mardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pitattvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakhattvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Amadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are now doing the Nidhidhyasana, and one has to recognize because of the remnant vasanas are obstructing the abidance in the knowledge. So that is required. Even though I understand that I am Brahmasmi and I have been listening to scriptures for a prolonged length of time under a competent teacher, still, and I can understand clearly, yet the knowledge has not been synced in. It is still remained as a paroksha jnanam rather than the aparoksha jnanam. And because of the remnant vasanas are obstructing that, and that has to be eliminated. And the intensity of those vasanas, and therefore appropriate sadhana will take longer, and we gave a essentially from the point of the Gita also. This is essentially just as the smoke covering the fire, or the dust covering the mirror, or the placenta covering the fetus. So one has to, depending upon that, it takes longer. It takes for the smoke covering the fire, all you need is to blow air, so it will be removed so that fire can be seen. Whereas in the case of a dust covering the mirror, you have to not just blow, you have to do some action of rubbing out and remove the dust, and the rubbing action is deconditioning, which was conditioned by the dust. So that deconditioning has to be done and by an effort, and the effort is not to make the mirror shine, it's to make the only remove the dust so that river can automatically reflects. And that's what is called the darshanam. And that is a second level of effort is required, because the type of covering is a little bit grosser compared to the previous one. And whereas even in the case of placenta in the garbham, where one has to remove, it takes 9 months before the sac goes away. So there is a lot more effort is required in order for the removal of the stronger obstructions. So even though one understands there's a degree of the evolution of the individual, and that's why it's called the frequency of perturbation from the knowledge, intensity of perturbation from the knowledge, and the recovery time from perturbation of the knowledge becomes slower and slower and slower as one slowly abides in the Atma. So it may take the whole life itself in order to do this, depending upon how strong those vasanas are. In the case of example of Nisargadatta Maharaj, who was a Panbidi Wala, is a Maharashtrian. Those who have studied I am that can see that his teacher told him, you are that, and it took only 3 years for him to realize, whereas some people take many years because of the vasanas, because he has a strong faith in the teaching itself, and that's what is required. And the Shraddha, as we see, one of the components of the preparation of the mind, says Viveka Vairagya Shat Sampatti, 6 folds of required discipline, of which Shraddha is very important. The faith in the teaching itself has to be important, and therefore these, because of the lack of those, are the problems of obstructing the knowledge. And we said there are 3 types of vasanas: Lokanuvartanam tyaktva, tyaktva dehanuvartanam, shastranuvartanam tyaktva, swadhyasapanayam kuru, apanayam kuru. Sadhya sa apanayam kuru. So one has to remove this adhyasa, swadhyasa is swadhyasa, superimposed by oneself, that is due to the either the Ishvara Srishti or Jiva Srishti, because I am not knowing the reality behind the plurality that I see. I take the plurality as a reality, but what is reality is the pure existent consciousness alone is the reality, because reality is that which is changeless, and anything that is changing cannot be real as per the absolute reality. Only transactionally it is real, but not absolutely real. So here there are three types of categories of vasanas. One is loka anuvartanam, it says following the loka. Loka means the worldly affairs. So one is continuously transacting and giving a reality to the worldly affairs. This includes the profession, possession, relationships, transactions. All are loka anuvartanam, because one has to slowly give up and do what is really required one. That is because of one has to live in the society. Therefore, niyatam kuru. Krishna's advice is, you do your obligatory duties. Obligation depends upon the role that you are playing. So do your obligatory duties, but don't get involved in unnecessarily unwanted that distracts your attention from the totality. And that's what is essentially implied in terms of the obligatory duties. Kuru means you have to do it. Niyatam, that which is obligation, that can be the occasional obligation, and Nitya Naimittika Karma. Nitya Karma and Naimittika Karma. So it's just as Snanamiva, just as taking bath. Why should I take bath? Because it will remove things that are there which are not doesn't belong to you. So all the dust has to be removed, and that has to be removed by putting vasanas. This is what deconditioning is. So you have been conditioned by the dust on top of it. You have to make an effort to deconditioning it. And that's what do I gain by taking bath? Nothing you will gain. You may lose a lot of things which doesn't belong to you. Same way, niyatam kuru, obligatory duties will help you to remove your vasanas. That is what essentially implication of what Krishna's advice to Arjuna, and through Arjuna to all of us. So loka anuvartanam. So it is a transactions in the world. I cannot but transact in the world. So I cannot, even if I go as a parivrajaka, as a bhikshu all over, but still I had to take care of my own body, and I had to do the obligatory duties to make the body survive until the body drops automatically due to the whatever the prarabdha is over. Therefore, the lokanuvartanam is not the dismissal of the transactional world, but it's only minimizing the unnecessary work, only taking that which has to be done, and that has to be recognized, and that's what is called lokanavartanam tyaktva. So do not get your profession, possessions, obligations and relationships, don't get unnecessarily involved other than what is required. And that's what is called the niyatam kuru, nitya naimittika karmam. Chakva dehanavartanam. So removing the obligations of the body. Don't pamper the body more than what is required. So body does require the proper food, and the proper food depends upon how the body has been accustomed, has been brought up from the childhood. So it can only take certain type of foods, not that it wants to only this kind, but whatever that is brought up from the body that is conducive to the body has to be provided, and a minimum that is required as the body needs. Everything else more than what body needs, if you take, it's called a greed. And only human being is a greedy person, because any other animal takes only what it needs. And therefore tyaktva dehanavartanam. So don't pamper the body more than what is required for it to continue. For what? For realization only, because that is the whole purpose of life itself. Shastra anuvartanam tyaktva. So there are three vasanas that here the Acharya is identifying. One is the lokanuvartanam, another is the dehanuvartanam, and the third one is Shastra anuvartanam. So tyaktva, give up this Shastra also. So Shastra also, here Shastra as Chandrasekhara Bharati interprets here, is Shastranuvartanam implies is all aparavidya. That means all other sciences that are not really needed anymore. They are there for transactional purposes, but don't get involved too much other than what is needed. And that's what is called Shastranuvartanam. So here the Shastra includes Purva Kanda also in the Vedas, where Purva Kanda is for karma upasana or karma kanda. So don't get unnecessarily karma actions that are not necessary. They involve only that is necessary, required for because you already graduated from that, and therefore you start more on the jnana kanda, and that is for Shastranuvartanam has to be given up also. So Shastravasana is not Vedanta Vasana, it is essentially Veda Purva Vasana or Aparavidya Vasana, and that has to be Tyaktva, has to be given up. That means don't spend your time more on that, spend more and more onto the nature of the reality. But if you're involved in understanding the nature of reality through that process also, then it's okay. The question of how you convert the activities towards the higher compared to the lower, and that's a part of the Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga. So this is called Swa-Adhyasa, Apanayam Kuru. So therefore, this is give up all these things essentially is to be implied. So Swadhyasa Apanayanam means destroy this. Destroy this. Destroy means is intellectually destroy, because if you try to eliminate by any process, and you are giving a reality to the process. So these processes are self-superimposed by mentally, oh, this is required, that's required, and that's required. These all we superimpose so much on our own and get entangled in the day-to-day affairs. So give up those entanglement by withdrawing yourself unnecessarily obligations and so on. And these three vasanas are continually analyzed in the next few slokas. In the sloka 222, it says, Loka vasanaya jantoho shastra vasanaya chapi deha vasanaya jnanam yatha vainaiva jayate. So as long as this Loka Vasana, Shastra Vasana, Deha Vasana, those are three identified, the main effects of the Vasanas are there, therefore the knowledge will not sink in. That means people will still be worried about at the local level, at the worldly level, or at the science level, or the body level, because the mind is still involved in that Vasanas. Samsarakara gruha moksha michyoho ayomayam pada nibaddha shrunkhalam. Samsarakara gruha moksha michyoho ayomayam pada nibaddha shrunkhalam. Vadanti tajñāha padavasanatrayam. Vadanti tajñāha padavasanatrayam. Yosmad vimuktasya upaiti muktam. Yosmat vimuktasya upaiti muktim. So samsara karagruha moksha michyoho. So it says, if the ichha, if the desire is want to get out of this samsara karagruham, it is a prison of samsara, and one has to get liberated from the prison of samsara. What is samsara? Samsarati, continuously movement, essentially involving in the movement of the worldly affairs of the three vasanas that are specified. So samsara is because of taking the limitations of the body, mind, intellect as limitations, and because of the limitations there is the helplessness comes into picture, and because of the helplessness anger comes into picture. Kama yesha, krodha yesha, rajoguna samudvaha. So that's what Krishna says. This kama, krodha are desire, and if the desire is not fulfilled, anger, all that is because of these limitations, because I have to depend on something other than myself for my happiness, and those dependent is not reliable, or things do not work the way I expect things. Therefore there will be an anger, frustration, and a depression also, depending upon how intensely one gets involved in that. So this is called essentially helplessness, and helplessness causing anger, anger causing into the frustration, and frustration causing into the depression. This is the hierarchy of that. This is Krishna gives us in that in terms of the second chapter. This is as you get involved and more, it becomes a kama, krodha into the pranasyati. The one gets essentially deep down. So what's the remedy? Remedy is given by Shankara. It says in the Bhagavan says the satsangatve nissangatvam, nissangatve nirmohatvam, nirmohatve nischalatatvam, nischalatatve jivan muktaha. So opposite ladder is essentially by having satsang. Satsang is that which is related to the sat. Sat is pure existence, that is essentially Brahman. Because Sadeva Saumya Idamagrama, Brahman alone is the nature of pure existence. So satsang is essentially keep the mind in that state of understanding all the time. In that way you get nissangam, you get detached from all other obligatory things, and nissangatve nirmoham, no delusion, and delusion will essentially lead you to the moksha or liberation. So samsara karagruha moksha michyoho. So if you have the desire, strong desire, so essentially mumukshatvam has to be there, and that's where the problem is. Problem is not having a very intense desire to get liberated. I want that, but at the same time I want this. So you cannot have both ways, and that's called vyabhicharitvam. Krishna calls it as a vyabhicharitvam. So essentially those who completely surrender to me, surrendering what? Surrendering completely all your other vasanas have to be completely surrendered to him. How do I surrender? Rasavarjam rasopyasya parandrushva nivartate. So by the rasa will be still there. That the taste for it is still there, even if I physically avoid it. The taste lingering in the mind, as I would like to have it, I want to have it, and all those things will be still there. So how do I get rid of that one? Rasavarjam rasopyasya parandrushva nivartate. By having the mind concentrate on the param, that means on the Ishvara, you can get rid of that. So those anasya ananyas chintayanto ma ye janah paryupasate tesham nityabhyuktanam yogatshemam vahamyaham. I take the responsibility if you have completely surrendered to me without any other thought. Ananyas chintayanto ma ye janah paryupasate, without any other thought other than me. So Krishna himself says your mind has to be in me only, not in the lokana vasanas that we mentioned about. Lokavasana, Sastravasana, Dehavasana. These three vasanas, because I am going after these, says go after me only, then I take care of your responsibility also. Yogatshemam vahamyam. So it's a guaranteed statement that he takes the responsibility of maintaining you also, and that is what is the correct moksha ichyoho. If you have the strong desire for that, people who have strong desire only make an effort for it. So once I love it, I want it and go after it, obviously all other things you have to give up. The one who wants to get first class has to give up all other dissipatory actions and concentrate on the study only. That means you have to renounce all that which are distracting the main one, and contemplate on that. In the same way, moksha ichcha also, because this is the final. Moksha is liberation from the cycle of birth and death itself, and therefore this is the most important. Samsara karagruham. Otherwise you will be going life after life after life. That's what is called samsara. Samsara means movement from not only in this life, but life on life. And there's punarapi maranam, punarapi jananam, jasare sayanam, niya samsare. That's called samsara. Samsara karagruha moksha ichyoho ayomayam pada nibaddha shrunkalam. Ayomayam, this is like an iron. Ayam is iron. Ayomayam pada nibaddha shrunkalam. It's like iron shackles are binding in the feet, so you cannot even move around from the samsara. It is not real shackles, it's a mentally imposed shackles itself. So people can say, I cannot get out of it, only because of their mind is entangled in that. Vadanti tadnyaha padavasanatrayam. So padavasanatrayam, these trayam vasana, these three vasanas, the loka vasana and the Shastra Vasana and Deha Vasana are three powerful ones at the body level, at the world level, and also at the intellectual level. All are becoming Patavasana Trayam. Says Vadanti Tajnaha, says this Tajnaha, the knowers of this say that you have to give up these shackles that are like iron shackles. That means they are very strong. And yoho asmad vimuktasya upaite muktam. Whoever can do it, and this is a statement by the wise people, say that whoever can give up these shackles, by how do I remove them? By looking at the vision of this. That's what is essentially Daivim Esha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratya Mameva Ye Prapadyante. Surrendering to me alone, I can release. Surrendering to that higher reality alone, one has to give up these shackles of this bondage due to the vasanas, remaining vasanas. And that's what the Acharya says here. Then some more examples are given in terms of how one has to purify the mind in order to arrive it. The mind is already pure, but we made it impure, and the impurity has to be removed by, just like the plate is dirty, so plate itself doesn't have any dirt, but you have superimposed some dirt on it, so you have to put a soap on it and clean it out, and in the process you have to remove the soap as well as the original dirt, leaving the plate as clean. And that's what are being examples of where the conditioning has occurred by process. Therefore, deconditioning is also a process involved. A sadhana is implied. Sadhana is not for realization. Sadhana is only for purification of the lingering vasanas here. And that we will go into more details of. The few examples are given to illustrate the same thing. That we will do in the next talk. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.